Hello, this is my little diagram of the Battle of Stirling Bridge, fought between the Kingdom of Scotland and the Kingdom of England on September the 11th, 1297. September 11th just seems to be a day that unfortunately keeps showing up in history. The Scottish army, led by, of course, William of Wallace and a forgotten nobleman, Andrew de Moray, have taken up a very strong defensive position on the Abbey Craig. That's a hill where they have stationed their famous Scottish Schiltrons. The Schiltron is basically a rerun of the Macedonian and Greek phalanxes. It was able to work because, like the Greek city-states and the Macedonian tribes, there are very strong local loyalties. No one wants to go back to their hometown and explain why they were the ones that broke ranks. The Scots do have a small contingent of cavalry, but it plays no part in the battle. The English, led by the hated taxman Hugh de Cressignham, interestingly enough, he was hated in Scotland, but the English also hated him too because he collected a lot of debts that the English nobles owed the crown, and the senior commander, the Earl of Surrey. The English have a problem. They are behind what is known as the River Firth. And the river forms a loop. It runs all along like this, back like this, and then resumes its course. The problem for the English is they have to get across this bridge known as Stirling Bridge, hence the name of the battle, Stirling Bridge. Now, according to etiquette, yes, war is fought by rules, you let the other side cross and set up. Here you have some English men-at-arms that are moving into position, directed by Cressignham. Then comes the cavalry, more cavalry here on the other side of the bridge, some men-at-arms, and then way in the back of the line, the famous English longbows. Militarily, one of the more effective parts of the army, but in terms of social status, dead last. Cressignham and Surrey are just figuring that their enemies, the Scots, will let them cross, set up a nice, neat battle line, and then they can go about clubbing each other to death. As we're about to see, that is not going to happen. The Scots have made their move. They've come down off the hill and are now charging in a solid phalanx or Schiltron wall towards the English. William Wallace commanding on the Scottish left. Andrew de Moray, the senior commander. It's de Moray who's in command and not Wallace, charging on the Scottish right. The English on the battle side of the river have responded. Cressignham has gotten enough knights across that he can mount one of those famous heavy armored cavalry charges that should just run the Scots down. So he thinks. The English men-at-arms have also formed up into a solid battle line. The English think they're okay. They don't have everyone across, but after all, you're just fighting Scots. What they've forgotten is no one has faced a phalanx in almost 1,500 years, and it's going to be a very rude awakening and a brutal lesson. An even bigger concern is on the southern side of Stirling Bridge. The English have a traffic jam. Seeing the battle suddenly break out, everyone seems to want a piece of it. The knights are trying to rush in to get across the bridge. The rest of the men-at-arms are trying to rush in across the bridge. And what you've got is a good old-fashioned Middle Ages traffic jam. The Earl of Surrey cannot sort it out. And most interestingly enough, the English longbows, the most lightly armed of all the English forces, are just simply in the back of the line. They can't move. And if you've ever been in a bumper-to-bumper traffic jam with an accident in the front, you know nothing moves. There's no help getting across that bridge due to this big old snarl. And finally, notice here's the Scottish cavalry, moved up onto Abbey Craig, staying well out of the way. There's no point in them charging down. The flanks are anchored at both ends by the River Firth. There's very little room for these armies to maneuver. Cavalry has very little place. The English cavalry has only one option: to ride straight ahead and ride over the Scots. If they can't ride them over, they're going to be in trouble. Well, the two sides slam into each other, and it's Schiltron 2, English nothing. Under Wallace, the Scottish left easily pushes the English men-at-arms back. Now, these are well-armed, somewhat well-trained soldiers, but they are simply no match for the Phalanx Schiltron style of fighting. Some English men-at-arms have been killed, and the rest of the English men-at-arms formation is beginning to panic and break apart. They just cannot make headway against this long, solid row of spears, and the Scots keep formation. On the Scottish right, de Moray's forces have stood firm against the cavalry charge. For the first time, a charge of heavy cavalry has been stopped cold in its tracks by infantry. Cressignham doesn't know what to do, the Scots are ready to advance, and the knights are about ready to get knocked off their horses. South of the bridge, things have gotten not much better. You still have the medieval traffic jam, knights and men-at-arms fighting each other to get across, the Earl of Surrey unable to restore order, and the English longbows still stuck at the back of the pack. No help is getting across the bridge. Scottish cavalry still sitting it out on Abbey Craig. Nothing for it to do. It can only get hurt if it exposes itself. Unless something changes dramatically and fast, the English army north of Stirling Bridge are in trouble. The river makes a cold, hard loop around them. There is no place to go. You're in armor, you're carrying heavy weapons, you can't swim it, you can't get around it, you can't move forward, you can't move back. The English are in a trap of their own making. The battle has turned into a rout. On the left, Wallace is pressing home the advantage. More English have died. The Schiltrons are advancing, and the men-at-arms formation is completely broken apart. They're running in disorder. The Schiltrons, still in good order, following after them. On the Scottish right, the cavalry, the charge of heavy armored knights has been completely broken. Half the knights are dead. The rest, with Cressignham, are fleeing, and the Scottish Schiltron in well-ordered pursuit. But even worse, a small portion of Scottish Schiltron have gotten onto the bridge. They are now in control. There's no way the English men-at-arms or knights can pass. The traffic jam is completely snarled. English longbows out of the picture. Knights can't move forward. Men-at-arms can't move forward. Earl of Surrey can't do anything about it. And north of the river, the English army is trapped in this perfect loop of the river. No place to go. Heavy armor, can't swim across. And the Scots, under Wallace and de Moray, are not interested in prisoners. They've already broken the classic rule of warfare. You wait for your enemy to form up nice and neat. They charge ahead of time. They broke the rules. They aren't playing by the rules. That means no prisoners. And now the battle has gone from a battle to a massacre. The charge of the Schiltron has left more English dead in its wake. The English army is now surrounded between the river and the Scottish Schiltron, which has stayed in good order. Still lined up, nice long spears in front, no breaks in ranks. Cressignham and the cavalry and the men-at-arms are trapped. They've only lost a few in this retreat, but they now have no place left to go, and the Scots aren't taking prisoners. About the only significant Scottish casualty to note is de Moray, the aristocratic leader of the rebellion. Somehow he's got himself killed in this charge. No one's really sure how. And William Wallace has now taken sole and complete command of the army. Means he's going to get the glory, but also going to get the blame for this essentially charge of riffraff for killing men of quality. South of the river, the Scottish Schiltron is still that cork blocking up the bottom of the bridge. The English can't get across Stirling Bridge. There's no way they can help their brethren to the north. It's a trap. This side of the army, while it may survive, it can't get across to help. There is no help coming. Now, all we need now is one last move forward, and every Englishman north of the river is either going to get gored or is going to drown. And now, as they say, it's time for the body count. North of the river, the Schiltrons have closed in, and they've either killed all the Englishmen or the Englishmen have drowned in the River of Firth. One thing that we are sure of is Hugh de Cressignham, the hated taxman, hated both by the English and the Scots, was killed. He did not drown because supposedly his body is stripped, his skin flayed from the bone, and made into a belt for William Wallace. William Wallace is now Lord Protector, as High Protector of Scotland, all by himself. He gets all the glory, but in Longshanks' view, he will get all the blame. The battlefield is covered with English, the occasional Scottish dead, and unfortunately Andrew de Moray, the aristocratic leader, dead. South of the river, unable to cross, the English armies, under the leadership of the Earl of Surrey, are bravely turning tail and running south. It is a complete victory for Scotland. The last major English army in Scotland is gone. Stirling Bridge, the key into Scotland, is captured and held, and it looks like Scottish independence is won. But interesting enough, this battle has a few interesting sidelights. One, for the first time, basic plain infantry has shown that they can defeat cavalry with this phalanx formation. Now you might wonder, well, why didn't everyone else get Schiltrons? Well, for two reasons. One, you need some sort of local, strong, loyal identity, culture to hold them together. You just can't recreate clannish loyalty. I think that's why the only other power in Europe that ever adopted this fighting style were the Swiss and northern Italian city-states, where again you would see local common identities. Also, if you're aristocratic nobility and you've got at most maybe 1,000 knights for tens of thousands of peasants, the last thing you want to do is give masses of peasants the idea that they can organize and beat you. And no offense to our great hero William of Wallace and the fallen Andrew de Moray, but they are not the actual the instigators of this rebellion. They did not rebel because Wallace's woman was killed by an English lord. That's actually a total lie. It was something that a Scottish family of nobility, kind of like these Scottish knights sitting out the battle here, wrote into the histories sometime around the 1800s or so. No, the real instigators are the Scottish bishops. The Scottish Church was not under the thumb of the Scottish king. The Scottish king's job was to protect the church, not to run it. Not so in England. Starting with Henry II, the English kings could appoint and remove clergy, they could tax clergy, they could try clergy in secular courts. The English church is very much under the thumb of Edward Longshanks. The Scottish bishops didn't want this to happen. That's why they talked Wallace and then Robert the Bruce into leading these wars of independence. Much of the story of the wars of Scottish independence are the story of Scottish bishops versus English kings. But there is something else at work here. Wallace's army is an army of the people. The Schiltron is a popular people's army. That's how it works. That's how the Macedonian phalanx worked, how the Greek hoplite phalanxes worked. And these Scots have made up their mind that they are Scots. They are not going to be ruled by the English. This is, if you will, part of the nationalism that's sweeping Europe. You will see it with Joan of Arc. You will see it earlier when King John of England is kicked out of France because the French don't want to be English. But the northern English lords, despite the fact that they hate John of England, will go with him and not the Scottish king because they're English. All over the place, nationalism is sprouting up, and this battle is another part of it. Well, I guess that pretty much concludes this battle, except to say there is going to be a rematch. Edward Longshanks doesn't let things go. So while Stirling Bridge is a great victory for the Scots, the River of Forth is blue and red with English blood, the English army is going to be coming back. That's the nice thing about the English. They just plain never give up. And William Wallace is about to get a very harsh lesson in how fortunes can change. Thanks for watching.